What to prioritize. I think you can use your own life experience, those of you who are in school, and you can use your understanding of your school experiences now to decide for yourself, what do you value? What matters to you? What impresses you the most? But this is what I want you to be looking for. And again, you're going to vote for 2. So here are our 6 candidates. Connor, the founder of the Science Club, involved in philosophy, debate, and the school's cross-country team. Jillian does the church youth group, viola, and community service. Lisette coordinates activities in the children's hospital and does debate. She's a volunteer museum guide. She swims and she keeps a food blog. Ethan is the senior class council activities chair and does Boy Skate. Boy Skate, if you don't know, is a mock congress where people get together from all over an area. Usually what happens is that schools are able to nominate one boy for Boy Skate and one girl for Girl Skate, and they go. And this is generally considered to be a big deal. He does piano and drums. Julie is the treasurer of the drama club in 11, and her other activities are scattered. Ying is a summer job in sales, dance lesson, 1 year of autism volunteering, and drum lessons. I want to explain why I'm presenting the list of extracurriculars in this manner. This is how your list of extracurriculars gets presented in an admissions committee. When you send in a 3-page, single-spaced resume, your 3-page, single-spaced resume becomes that line. This is actually what happens to 4 years of your extracurriculars. Because when we're in committee and doing thousands of applications at once, we don't have time to pull out your resume, but we do have time to look at that one line. So when you see things like other activities are scattered, that is an admissions officer summarizing what they saw on an extracurricular list. Unless it says otherwise, these activities are sustained, they're done for 2 or 3 or 4 years, the level of involvement is normal, and there's no kind of outright leadership that's a particular note. So here's the 6 of them. I'm going to give you another moment, and you are again going to vote for 2. And if you have questions, you can feel free to ask. Yes? You are voting based on the combination of this slide, and that slide. So you have to fit the 2 pieces together and vote. Any other questions? Does anyone want me to put the academic slide back up for a moment? Yes. Here's the academic slide again. Refresh your memory, grades and stuff. And then we go back to the extracurriculars. How many haven't we? You guys ready? Jillian. Who's voting for Jillian? No one. No one is voting for Jillian. One of the 9 of you who decided to switch your vote from Jillian, explain to me why. Go ahead.
She's not showing me leadership qualities. What is not the other showing?
Can I ask who you're voting for?
Voting for Lisette and Liam.
So why is Lisette not voting?
Because Lisette is showing more involvement and in fact coordinating activities that needs to be leadership.
Well, so hang on, because you say Lisette has greater quality of activities, but half of her activities are the same as Jillian's. Right? Like, You've got Lisette doing coordinating activity at a children's hospital and volunteer guide at the traditional crafts exhibit compared to Jillian's community service. I mean, what's the difference? Clarity. What's interesting about this is if Jillian and Lisette were classmates, they could be doing exactly the same things. But Jillian wrote community service, and Lisette wrote volunteer museum guide for traditional crafts exhibit. One of those sounds much more interesting than the other and grabs your attention in a way community service doesn't. And the truth is, Jillian could be spending 3 times as long as Lisette doing her community service, but because what she writes is community service and what Lisette writes is coordinates activities at the children's hospital, you like her more. Yeah?
Is it Jillian that wrote community service, or the person who read her application summarized what she did as community service?
It could be either, but generally it's Jillian wrote community service. And if there was something there that had more texture, you would list that because, as you can see, it matters. Who's voting for Lisette? Who's going to join? I think I before. Oh my goodness, look at that. It looks like about half the room. Lisette, Tufts University. Who's voting for Ethan? Maybe a little bit less than half now. Who's voting for Julie? No one. Wow. And Yang, who's voting for Yang this time? Ooh, Yang lost a lot of support. Somebody who switched for Yang, tell me why.
All of her activities they don't show any leadership or innovation. They're just down lessons and drum lessons. We're doing only 1 year of voluntary no commitment to showing.
Does anyone want to disagree with that? Yeah.
Well, I picked up it as a sales job. So you've got a great grades, and you still have work experience. So you're able to do both. That would be very high in my mind.
So you're placing a lot of emphasis on the job. How many of you, I'm just curious, saw the job in sales and got really excited about that? A couple of you. Have you ever worked, the people who raised their hands for that, did you work in sales at any point? You did? Is that part of why you like it?
That's also why I like founder, because we're founder.
Founder.
Keyword.
I'll be honest with you, there's a woman in my office named Karen Richardson, and she worked all 4 years of high school and had a job. And when she sees kids that work, she is so excited about it. Because seeing this is pretty normal. You have 6 kids who are all pretty academically strong, and only one of them has a job. And she believes that that teaches you a lot of really important things. And if she had heard you say that this girl isn't doing innovation and she's not involved in anything significant, like Karen would have jumped up and been like, let's see you get a job at Banana Republic and actually manage to do it well. And what's interesting about that is like you have Karen using her personal experience to understand the kid in a way that I think is really appropriate. And part of Karen's role on the committee is to remind those of us who don't place as much emphasis on those things that they sometimes really matter. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be persuaded and change your vote, but it's useful to have someone in the room pointing it out. So, after round 2, we have Lisette and Ethan as the vote getters, with Connor very close behind. Jillian and Yang. No, Yang had to close. Jillian and Julie, the 2 J sounds, are completely out of it with 0. God. And Yang has a little bit of a split. So now I'm going to show you everything else. I'm going to show you all the things that make up the personal qualities. And this is what I want you to be looking for. I want you to be looking for citizenship and engagement. I want you to be looking for passion. I want you to be looking for personal political philosophies and backgrounds, pieces of the student that you think would make them interesting. What you're looking for here, in short, is do you want to meet these people? And if you met them, do you think you'd have an interesting conversation? And why? So we're going to begin with Connor. Connor is an American. His parents have graduate degrees. He attends the international school in Japan, or an international school in Japan, I say. I didn't tell you which one. Just an international school in Japan. Rosu, take my grade. His academic interests are philosophy and Japanese. He has an essay that takes an intellectual tack on the discourse of the word as success. The topic is not very personal. It's a dry style and reads like a term paper about the contrasting cultures between the US and Asia. Teacher calls him an erudite student who, quote, often wonders aloud in class. I did this once, and there was a parent in the front row, a dad, who said, that means he's a pain in the ass. I don't know if that's really true, but it's certainly a valid way to interpret that. And the counselor describes Connor's writing as clear and economical, but the rec does not offer much personal insight. To Connor, a philosophy Japanese boy living in Japan. Jillian attends a suburban high school in an affluent Chicago suburb. Her academic interests are biology, she's pre-vet. She has an essay about the grim conditions of a service trip to Indonesia. There's a flash of introspection, but the writing is clunky. Again, I want to point out, this is what an admissions officer would present to committee after reading her application. So the phrase, the writing is clunky, that is an admissions officer editorializing about the essay so that you can better understand the experience of reading. So what you're looking here is Jillian writes this 500-word essay about a service trip to Indonesia, and that 500-word essay gets reduced down to 2 sentences, one of which is there's a flash of introspection, but the writing is clunky. Her history teacher calls her reserved but insightful with growing confidence and high scholarly values. The counselor calls her somewhat shy and centered, and notes that she is emerging as a powerful force with grace. I don't really know what that means, but... Throw out some adjectives here. What do you see? Potential? What else? Describe her for me. Describe what you think it would be like to meet her. Quiet. Introverted, maybe. Reserved. Loves animals, probably. Perhaps loves animals because she's a little less comfortable with people. Maybe. I mean, maybe not, but you can kind of read that out of that. What I find really interesting about the process of reading these applications and what I'm constantly surprised by is how you can strip all these pieces down into these little sound bites, and despite that, a very specific kind of kid still comes out of the file. And you know, I think you can picture Jillian here in the same way I think you can kind of picture Connor. Right? Like, the boy who likes to debate, who's talking about philosophy, and who's kind of a pain in the ass. Here's Lisette. Lisette is Vietnamese, attending a Vietnamese school. English instruction is limited. Her parents are shop owners with high school degrees. This is literally the kid I was talking about earlier. And I want to go back to the academic slide, where Lisette has clearly the lowest English testing. But she's also in a Vietnamese school. So those numbers look a little different now in that context. If you had known this, how many of you might have voted for her? Yeah, interesting. So, Lisette, her English is not perfect, but her writing is poetic as she writes of rambling around the old quarter on her bike, quote, before the sun has kissed Noi good morning. One essay remarks that anyone not shocked by the way tradition is disappearing has not understood internationalization. She stays connected to tradition because of her grandparents who raised her. One teacher says she has the most well-developed aptitude for literature, and another says that she's a student who will stay after class to discuss, and she particularly loves reading Stephen Hawking and Martin Rees. Do you guys know who Martin Rees is? I don't either. But I can tell you, it's kind of fun to look up something on Wikipedia as a result of something you find in an application, which is what I actually did here. And I don't remember who Martin Rees is after doing that. So that's Lisette. Lisette's our Vietnamese kid interested in international issues. He likes literature and Stephen Hawking. Ethan lives in San Francisco. He's an American. You can see we're bouncing around the world a bunch. Interests are physics and environmental studies. He writes his essay about his passion for building cars, the need for environmentally friendly fuel, and his growing interest in organic biodiesel. It's an interesting, well-written essay, and that's the admissions officer editorializing. English teacher highlights his keen and wide-ranging intellect and his ability to integrate ideas from a wide range of areas of his life, and his goal is to work in the auto industry. And his counselor says that his peers were shocked that he didn't run for student council president, but Ethan wanted a, quote, less ceremonial position, and as a